going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Calisthenics radio podcast, where we talk about calisthenics, community, and collaboration. And I'm your host, Blake. And today I've got on Lindsay Aragon, who is my girlfriend, and she's also a triathlete. And today we are going to talk about calisthenics basics.
Hey, everybody.
What's going on? So Calisthenics is a community of like-minded people in the Dallas, Texas area who all share the passion for body weight exercise. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the basics. So how and why you should spend actually most of your time working on the fundamental skills. And when we're talking about the basics and the fundamentals, what we really mean is, the stuff that kind of comes to most people pretty easily. So your standard pull-ups, push-ups, squats, lunges, dips, body weight rows, things like that.
Yeah. Stuff that any athlete should be practicing, like no matter your sport, right?
Basically.
It creates a well-rounded athlete.
Yeah. And, it's pretty common for, at least what I've seen in calisthenics, for people to focus a lot of their time and energy on a lot of the harder skills. And, whenever you end up trying to chase things like the flag or the planche or, front levers and things like that, or even bar tricks, you can end up spending most of your training time on those really difficult techniques. And, there's some pros and cons to that for sure.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I know you guys talk about the awesome feeling you get when you hit those moves.
Yeah. It's like, it just feels great whenever you make, solid progress and, all of a sudden you're on a next progression. Say you're working on a planche and, you go from, say, just like a tuck planche up to like an advanced tuck, and you're holding that for, like 13, 14 seconds or something like that. It just feels really awesome whenever you get that. Or, maybe you like catch a 360 for the first time.
Right.
But the thing is that, you might go start spending way too much time on those advanced skills. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of neglect your basic strength skills.
Yeah, it's the grind. It's less flashy, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, it's not what a lot of people enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. Some of us like doing it. I like doing just like basic calisthenics workouts. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always feel like I'm making a lot of progress whenever mm-hmm. I do that because, obviously I have specific goals. Like I'm really trying to nail down like a solid parallel to the ground flag right now, and really working towards my front lever. And I'm getting extremely close to it. But the other thing about it is like whenever you start to practice, and I'm going through this today and, yesterday, I've been practicing these really difficult skills almost too much. And then you get to the point to where you're like really sore and you get knotted up. Like I had this horrible knot in my lat, that was like kind of like right where my lat meets my shoulder, and it was like, oh god, it was causing me so much pain, and it mm-hmm. hurt to touch. Mm-hmm. And I had to spend a decent amount of time last night like massaging it and rolling it out and everything. Mm-hmm. And that came from actually last night whenever I was practicing working on a flag, and it just all of a sudden happened, and I was just like, why does the back of my shoulder feel so tight and sore all of a sudden? And I found that knot, and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah. And luckily that wasn't an injury, but just a little soreness. But I mean, mm-hmm. that's kind of what it could lead to, right? Yeah.
Especially if you overdo it, it's like a lot of those like really advanced moves can be stressful on the joints.
Exactly.
If you're kind of like over practicing them, and you haven't really spent the time to build up. And that's one of the things that, drilling your basics does, is actually helps to develop that supporting strength, the supporting musculature. Also helps to develop your joints as well, because the thing is like you can gain strength a lot faster in your muscles versus gaining that same supporting strength, so you could call it, in your tendons and ligaments, which, typically, if you're even thinking about like an injury, if you injure a muscle, it usually recovers a lot faster than if you injure a joint. Joints can take literally 8 to 12 weeks sometimes to heal properly, or even longer depending on the severity of your injury. You know, if you tear a tendon, good luck, because you're going to be out of it for like 3 or 4 months at least. You know, if you simply like really badly strain a muscle, you know, it might take like a week and a half, 2 weeks or something like that, and you can usually be back to it. You know, with almost full intensity. But yeah, it's one of those things where you just have to kind of take it slowly and develop that, just like that support over time. And, you know, that applies to most sports overall, you know, especially particularly like endurance in your case. Yeah.
And every sport probably has its struggles when it comes to those supporting movements. I know in triathlon, you know, it's really hard to do strength because obviously we spend so much time doing our endurance work, and just literally the time crunch is the problem. But also, you know, we spend so much time trying to improve our speed. Speed work is like king with our sport. And so, but yeah, a lot of injuries result from that. So you can be in a running race, for example, and be going your top pace, but then you sidestep to pass someone, boom, and there goes your, you know, tear of a tendon, or you know, in my case, I tore my meniscus in a crash. And I always go back and wonder, like, if I would have done more hip supportive movements and you know, strengthen all my quad and, you know, all the supporting muscles, if that same tear would have even happened. So I've been in physical therapy for 7 weeks now, trying to build all that back up. And but yeah, you can prevent a lot. And
and it's funny too, because whenever I look back on some things like you know, accidents that I've had, you know, there was this one accident that I was in 2 years ago, and, you know, I kind of like attribute my overall lack of injury from that, even though I got a pretty bad, you know, cut on my head from it and was just bruised up. I was, you know, hit by a car while I was riding my bike, and actually that was 2 years ago now. And I didn't break a single bone or tear any tendons or ligaments or anything like that. And I feel like I can really attribute that to really grinding out basics my entire, just like, you know, workout career. And, you know, I think, obviously, you know, doing things like that, doing any of those weight bearing exercises, you know, you build up bone strength, but also, just going through all that as well helps to build up those tendons and ligaments. And you know, even another time, just more recently, like 2 weeks ago, we were practicing front flips in the Dawson X gym, and I completely overshot this one flip, and I overshot the mat, and so like I landed, my butt came down on the mat, and then both of my heels came down and slapped down on the concrete, and it hurt so freaking bad. And I was worried that I had fractured my heel, and literally just ended up bruising it. And I'm just like, God, I must have incredible bone density to avoid any type of breaks.
Yeah. Well, and it's all retrospective, you know, it's like you can't like prove that that's the reason why you didn't get that injury. But but yeah, I mean, I feel like it's probably a continuous through the athletes who sustain a high level of fitness and a high level of progression. You could probably see that they practice the basics the most, I would imagine, if you were to like interview, you know, huge sample size.
And I remember talking to Ray as well. And she was really big on saying like, we go through the basics pretty much almost every day. You know, that's what we focus most of our time on. And it's like, that's really how you develop that strength also in order to go into more advanced moves and just support your athleticism overall.
And what is the Dawson X community doing to support one another in their basics? Like, do you guys like egg each other on and like doing that kind of work? Or?
And also, I mean, a lot of the group workouts that we do, pretty much all the group workouts that we do are heavily focused around basics. So, you know, we're repping out pull-ups and push-ups and dips and squats and lunges. And, you know, whenever we were constructing the group workouts for the gym as well, you know, I was writing them based on just like things that you need to do, and then, you know, you have your skill work sort of separate from that, because you want to move your joints through all these different ranges of motion. And just like build it up from the ground up. Because the way I see it is, depending on your goals, you kind of want to be anywhere between 60 to 80% of your training, of your strength training, should be focused around basics.
Right.
80% more so if you're not really focused too much on, the heavy skill work. 60% or so if you are, because obviously there's only so much training volume that you can handle before you get, overtrained and burned out.
Exactly.
So
that's the struggle. That's the real struggle,
Yeah. So, an example of this would be, so say you're constructing a workout for your back, pulling, and you want to focus on something like a front lever. So this might be an example of something that I would do is, you have 1 or 2 progressions for that particular skill. So I might actually go and hold the hardest progression of a front lever that I can comfortably manage for a decent amount of time. Because obviously, if I can only hold a front lever for like 1 second, then that's not really going to be a good training stimulus.
I see.
So I might do like advanced tucks, or maybe, one-legged or straddle or something like that. Something where I can really dial in my form and, get a decent amount of time. And then I'll also do another type of progression. So maybe I'll do front lever pulls, and then after that, it's going to be focused around things like, pull-ups, for example, because you're working your back muscles as well. So you want the supporting exercises to really make up the meat and potatoes of your workout regimen.
As far as time.
Time and focus, and like what you're really spending most of your energy on.
When you say to separate them, are you saying in a separate workout, or do you take on like a warm-up activation phase of every workout where you do these basics?
Well, so, you can use very light basics, for example, in order to warm up your muscles.
Sure.
So, say you've already got down pull-ups really well, start doing some Australian pull-ups, basically some body weight rows to kind of warm up your back, do some band pull-aparts, to get your rear delts activated, etc., things like that. And then what I mean by separation is, because a lot of those advanced skills require a lot of, they require a lot of strength and they require a lot of focus that you're not going to be able to. It's going to be harder to put in whenever you're already fatigued from,
exactly.
If you're repping out, a lot of pull-ups and things like that, you're going to fatigue yourself and before going into those harder exercises. So that's why I try to put the skill exercises first while you're still fresh. You also have lower potential for injury whenever you're fresh as well, because you can actually activate your muscles fully, stay as rigid as possible as you need to be. Your form's going to be better, etc.
Yeah. That's so funny. It's different than endurance, because we have our, we have like a warm up, and then we have another warm up a lot of the times, and then we have our main set, which is literally like when you're 60% through the workout, so it's just totally different from a time, and placement of your main set, Yeah. And
it all depends on your goals as well.
Oh yeah.
If you're the type of person and you're just mainly training calisthenics because you want to build a bunch of muscle and you're not necessarily focused on gaining a lot of higher level skills, then you probably want to focus most of your energy on, repping out your basics, or like, harder variations of basics. So say if you can already do pull-ups, maybe do some archer pull-ups and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because you want to obviously put all that energy into the exercises that are going to build the most muscle.
Yeah. So do you ever get to a point where the basics are just like too easy and they're just useless to do? Is there ever that?
I wouldn't say that they're useless. So if you progress to a point to where, say, for instance, you're doing push-ups, and, you can easily rep out 20, 25, 30 push-ups. You're going to want to make them harder. That's the thing is, it's still going to be considered a basic exercise. You're just going to alter the leverage, so to speak, to make it harder, but not so hard that it becomes like more of a hard strength skill. So like if you're going into, say, push-ups to like a pseudo planche push-up where your hands are closer to your hips, like underneath your hips. For most people, that's a really hard strength exercise. Most people can't get, more than 8 to 10. And that's usually when you're pretty strong already. And so what you're going to have to do there is, for example, you take a regular old push-up and then you start doing diamond push-ups, or you start doing archer push-ups, or maybe you start doing explosive push-ups, things like that, to where you can still get in a decent rep range. But you're, still focusing on, it's still a basic skill.
Your definition of basics changes as you progress, essentially.
Yeah. Because, obviously you want something to be challenging enough for you. If something's too easy, then you're not going to get a lot of training stimulus out of it. It's just going to be kind of like a maintenance type of thing, or maybe like a warm up. For me, push-ups are more of a warm-up or like a burnout type of thing at the end of a workout versus something that I would use as like a primary like muscle building tool. Or obviously you can also make it harder by adding weight to the exercise, or
by being strict in your form. Right, that's another forgotten aspect of basics.
So and this is one of the funny things about it is, like, whenever I talk to some people about calisthenics and they come from more of a weightlifting background, or I guess like the more traditional fitness route backgrounds that's more focused around machines and weights and stuff like that, a lot of people will say things like, I don't feel like calisthenics is enough. And I'm like, well, can you get up on a pull-up bar and really perform a perfect pull-up? That's going to be like, starting from a dead hang, you get into a hollow body position, your entire body is rigid, your abs are tensed, your feet are pointed, like your toes are pointed down. You're contracted like you're about to be punched or, kicked in the gut, basically. And then, you slowly retract your shoulder blades. You pull yourself up in a perfect straight line, right? Chin over the bar. You're not rubbernecking. You're not kipping whatsoever. And you lower yourself, you use a good tempo. Maybe you're doing like 2 to 3 seconds per rep. You're not just like banging them out, flopping all over the place.
Right.
And you do something like that, you're going to have a lot of muscle activation that a lot of people are not used to. And so you take someone who's been used to just kind of like banging out, kind of like half-assed pull-ups their entire life, and you start having them do that. Maybe they could bang out 10 or 12 half-assed pull-ups. All of a sudden they're doing like 4 or 5 because now their form is so strict. All that strength that they thought they had was actually just, they're using momentum. They're using a lot of body English to complete the exercise.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like that's super important too, to have like other members of your community watching that, that's an aspect of the accountability you guys gain from one another, you know, because it's hard to really judge that yourself. It's easy to get in that comfort zone of just like flopping around doing what you always do. You know?
And that's the way we really try to teach it too, in the tutorial videos that we're making. And, even whenever you come out to the Calisthenics meets or to the gym, we're going to show you how to do the exercise properly, like the real way how to do it. And the thing about doing those exercises properly is, your body doesn't know the difference between an external weight and just moving your own body weight. Your muscles don't know the difference. Your nervous system doesn't really know the difference. The main thing is that, in calisthenics, you tend to activate more muscles because you're doing what's called a closed chain movement versus open chain, because you're not like just moving a limb around. You're actually like you're fixed to the ground, or like a pull-up bar or something like that. So you're essentially using the entire chain of muscles in your body to complete an exercise. So that's kind of the main difference. But that's the thing, is whenever you actually get really strict in your form, you open up the potential to build a lot of muscle and strength with calisthenics, even if you're just drilling out the basics. Yeah,
and you leave a lot on the table without drilling out the basics. Exactly.
Yeah, and the thing is too about doing it is you teach your body the control, that, mind muscle connection that you really need in order to advance to other skills. And, that also applies into other sports as well. So, regardless of what sport you're playing, you'll see a lot of coaches use a lot of calisthenics exercises as well.
Yeah.
There is weightlifting in, most sports as well, particularly the ones that focus more on being heavier weight, football and things like that, where you kind of need to pack on a lot more weight and muscle. It tends to be easier to do that with weights, because you can load up a squat bar with 400 pounds or whatever. It's going to be hard to put on tons of leg muscle doing body weight squats. But so, there are obvious separations, but the thing is learning to use your body, through all those basics, really drill them out. Once you've completed literally thousands of reps over time, your body awareness is just going to get better over time.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What is your definition of core?
So this is the funny thing. I mean, whenever people talk about like core exercises, for example, a lot of people go to thinking about like sit-ups and crunches and whatnot. And like, even though there's not, or even the, let's call it the plank.
Yes.
Even though there's nothing wrong with those exercises, they tend to not really train your core in a difficult enough manner.
Right.
Thing with crunches, most people aren't doing crunches and sit-ups properly anyway. But even the plank, a lot of people went more towards like the static holds to train the core, because they are one of the best ways to train your core. Most of what your core is doing is actually resisting movement. A lot of people, when they think about, your core, they're thinking about, how can I get my abs to, crunch? Because that's kind of what we've been taught over time for the most part. But really, what your core is designed to do is actually to resist movement for the most part. There's certain parts, obviously, like your lower abs pull your legs towards your chest. They assist in that movement along with your hip flexors and your quads and whatnot. But things like the plank, it really isn't, like I said, it's not difficult enough. It's one of those things where it's very easy to build up to a 1 minute or so plank, or you've already kind of out trained it.
Right.
And then you should move on to something harder. So even like a side plank or an L sit, for example. Like I love the L sit in terms of, really building core strength overall, because you're in a more active position. And that's the thing, is like whenever you're actually utilizing your core in any type of sport or most movements, you're in an actual active position. Whereas whenever you think about the plank, you're in kind of more of a passive position. You're just, on your elbows and on your toes. You're not really using a lot of other musculature to support your body at the same time.
Right.
Your abs are literally your abs and your lower back are just stabilizing yourself to, keep your hips from sagging for the most part. Yeah. Whereas like whenever you're in an L sit, you're actually having to push down.
Got it.
And, protract your shoulders, and you're in this type of position. Yeah. Or even like a hanging L sit, you can do that as well. But that's the thing, is like, that's why I like those types of exercises better, is because they actually engage more of the body at the same time. And that's kind of, that's how your body works together.
Yeah. And that's how you're going to develop that functional core. So like if you're running, a lot of times my coach will be like, engage the core. But it's like, I feel like most of the athletes don't really know what that means, while they're moving their other limbs, while they're thinking about their other aspects of their form. It's like, okay, does that mean I just like suck it in? What does that mean? But maybe if they were to practice like L sits, they would understand, because that's more of an active movement with the core.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too is, you're training your other muscles to work together with it. And so back to, I guess, applying it to calisthenics is like, whenever you think about doing a flag, for example, flag is very core intensive. Same thing with a front lever or a planche or whatnot. Most of these skills are extremely core intensive. Yeah. But it requires your core to be able to work synergistically with the muscles that are being used in those exercises as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I always go back to my endurance sports. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I really think that people should spend a lot of time working through those basics, perfect the form, really try to center your training around them, kind of regardless of what your goals are. You still want to go through all those exercises that you might think are too easy because maybe you've gotten to like a higher skill level already. But the thing is like, I can take people, and it's funny because, the classes that I've written for Calisthenics, even though they're made up of almost exclusively basics, whenever I take people through them, they're pretty well challenged by those various exercises. Yeah. And you can really tell the difference between someone who's drilled the basics and the people who haven't. Yeah. Because the people who haven't drilled those basics, their form is breaking down really quickly. I mean, like 10 minutes into the workout. Right. And yeah, it's one of those things where it translates over into those other skills, and your form is going to be even better on those other skills the more that you really go through it like that.
I was going to say, would a trained eye be able to identify the people who practice basics from the advanced skills? Like, if you were to watch someone on the bar, do like a freestyle kind of thing, like, could you tell if they do basics or not? I mean,
oh yeah, they typically flow better. They're more fluid in their movements.
That's what I would imagine.
They can keep their body stiff and rigid when it needs to be, etc.
Sure, like that full control look.
Yeah, and then there's that other thing too about the basics where they're really the best part of calisthenics for building muscle. Whenever you think about a lot of the more advanced skills, even though some of them can be muscle building, the main issue with them is that most people can't hold these skills or perform these skills for enough reps or for enough time to really have the muscle under good enough tension for a long enough period of time in order to actually kind of stimulate that muscle building process. Because I know there's a lot of debate on this, and certainly you can build, some amount of muscle if you're mainly training more advanced movements and, static holds and things like that. But really repping out all of those, repping out pull-ups and push-ups and dips and whatnot, that kind of stuff really gives you that rep range that you need to be in order to stimulate maximal muscle building with calisthenics. Because that's another one of those things too, is, people often think about, well, if I just do calisthenics, I'm just doing, all these basic exercises and I'm just going to be doing them for sets of 30. Obviously you're going to try to make them harder over time, etc., in order to build the muscle and, focusing on that form and everything like that. And that's where you really get the maximal benefit from it.
For someone just starting out in calisthenics, would you recommend, obviously someone literally just starting out, that you would just essentially do all basics, right? Because you can't execute those advanced moves if you don't have that basic like muscle and skill, but for someone who's progressing, just basically foraying into those advanced skills, would you think that they would do more 80 to 90% basics?
Especially at first, if you're not coming from a background of fitness in the first place, or any type of strength background where you don't have some already, solid strength built up, that's probably the best approach, I would say. And then, after a couple of months, you can start to dabble into learning some of the more advanced movements. Depending on your weight and everything as well. It's like calisthenics is one of those things where it's the more you weigh, the harder everything is, because you're moving your body weight.
Exactly.
It just depends. There's obviously some guys that I've seen who are really small, who can learn some of the more advanced exercises without really building a whole lot of muscle, because they, if you weigh 120, 130 pounds and you're like a string bean, then it can be really easy to learn, because you can build strength without muscle for sure.
Got it. Yeah.
So, just to kind of testify to it, you know, I guess like the muscle building potential of just like repping out tons of basics. I think it's like over the past about 2 years or so, you know, I've put on approximately 10 pounds of, you know, mostly muscle. And that's essentially doing like 90% calisthenics. I do occasionally some kettlebell work and things like that. But, you know, for the most part, yeah, it's just like it's body weight exercise.
Are there people in the calisthenics movement who would oppose that weight gain through muscle just because it makes their advanced movements harder?
Oh, for sure.
Like,
yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people too who like they'll completely skip leg day in order to, because like it makes certain things like levers and planche a lot easier.
Right.
Or, you know, it can make basically any upper body exercise typically becomes sort of easier.
Yep.
Whenever your legs are a little bit lighter.
Yep.
Anytime you're moving your full body weight.
It's like the cyclists who have the baby arms, you know? It's like don't. It's like the opposite, but yeah. It's
I mean, idea. And that's a lot of sports too that require you to continuously move your body, you know, running too, you know, that is just like the more that you weigh, the slower you're going to be, the harder it's going to be, etc. So
yeah, that's fascinating.
but yeah, I think that it just about does it for this episode. But yeah, if you're interested in learning more about calisthenics, you can subscribe to this podcast and we'll be coming out with new content regularly. That's going to be every Wednesday. Every Wednesday we release a new episode. And Calisthenics meets weekly at White Rock Lake on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. If you're interested in coming, those meets are completely free to attend, although there also is a Calisthenics gym in Dallas, Texas as well. And you can learn more about signing up for classes and memberships at Calisthenics.com. And you can also purchase t-shirts and other cool swag there. I don't have on a Calisthenics t-shirt today. I'm actually being a heathen right now. And check us out on YouTube and Instagram. The majority of things that you're going to find are going to be on Instagram. That's where we, you know, Lou has all like the live videos and everything like that when we're at the gym, at the lake, and everything like that. So you can see everyone practicing their skills and their tricks and whatnot. See the kind of workouts that we do. And yeah, feel free to reach out to us with any questions or topic suggestions for the podcast, or if you want to speak about your calisthenics journey, and you can reach out at podcast@calisthenics.com. Sweet. So I guess that just about wraps up this episode. Thanks for listening, guys, and thanks, Lindsay, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, until next time, everyone.